I'm going to show you something here from Ezekiel 43. I was reading about this. I was reviewing this. I happened to have the Gemara right, the Navi open right in front of me earlier this week when Machon Mikdash called me. Okay, now it's not that it was the head of Machon Mikdash. It wasn't Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, and saying, how are you? It's so nice to speak to you. It was their fundraisers. Okay, Machon Mikdash will call you up and ask you to raise, ask you for money. Why? Because when you become a balabas, you might give a little tzedakah here and there, and then they'll forever send you. In the olden days, when my father was me, in my situation, so you used to send a little donation in an envelope. So what happens? They start sending you more envelopes. Anybody you've ever given tzedakah to sends you envelopes all year long, right? Give us more money. And then before Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, you have to give, $18 or whatever it is to every single thing. And that happened to my grandfather also. At least by the time my grandfather got into the situation, they start sending books. Like you gave money to Hask or High Lifeline, they'll send you little machzorim. And you send money to the Telz Yeshiva, everybody knows what do you get from Telz Yeshiva? You get Hanukkah candles and charoses. Hanukkah candles before Hanukkah, of course, and charoses, Haroseth from Israel, the old, very Zionist, 1950s Zionist-y, package. You've seen it? Yeah, it was funny. It was that was like a staple. The Telz Yeshiva would give everybody charoses and Hanukkah candles. Why? Because one time he gave a donation. That's the way they kept the donations coming even into the early 21st century. So nowadays, they don't use envelopes here in this country. Instead, they have Hora Keva, or you just pay it over the phone. So if you give money to anybody, anytime, anywhere, they'll never forget, and they'll hit you up for money, again. So how did I get involved in Kol Mikdash? I one time many times, I brought Manui for Korban Pesach from them. Now there's a lot more places that'll do it. Now I just do it for private individuals, right? But once they have you, they have you. So every now and then they say, we're doing this initiative, give money to help build Kalim for the Beis HaMikdash, which, by the way, is a very noble thing. You've seen what they've made. They've made a menorah. They've made, they're the ones who are they're the ones who are. They're also making big day kahuna. So I believe in this. It's a good thing to support Yeshivat Har Bayit also, and Yeshivat HaMikdash. They're also the ones doing the work on the ground, and God bless them. So you have to support them. So I was reading this. It says Atav and Hadam. This is the Haftarah for this is one of the Haftarahs, at least in the annual cycle. Now, son of man, after Yechezkel Navi had been shown the entire plan how to build the Beis HaMikdash, he said the angel who was guiding him around told him, Hagedet Beit Yisrael Habayit. I put it in English here because people said normally I can't see how do you say this in English? It says, tell the house of Israel about the temple. Okay, they'll become ashamed of their iniquities. To do it tochnit. And then they should start measuring the plan. So tell them how to build the Beis HaMikdash, and they'll become so ashamed of all their averos. What averos? The averos that they did throughout history that caused the temple to be destroyed and to stay in a state of destruction. You get them excited about learning how to build the Beis HaMikdash. You read these few chapters, the major part of the end of Sefer Yechezkel. It'll get people excited about building the Beis HaMikdash. V'im nichlemu mikol asher asu. If they do become ashamed of everything they did, Surata Bayit Tpunato, Umotzav, Umoav, V'chol Tzurotov, Ve'ed Kol Chulatav, V'chol Tzurotov, V'chol Tzurotov, Hodat with them. What does he tell them to do? They become ashamed of them. Tell them about the shape of the house, all the passageways in the house, everything else here. It's just Motzav. What's it between Motzav and Movoav? Motzav apparently are its exits and entrances. Why isn't an entrance and exit the same thing? It's the gate, right? No, there's certain places where you're supposed to enter and certain places you're supposed to go out. Okay. And all the rules about how you should build the Beis HaMikdash, okay, get them very excited about everything here, and all the halachas, and write it down in front of them. Write this book, Sefer Yechezkel, which has blueprints, very confusing blueprints that are certainly not anything that any human alive could actually write it out. Many architects and other types have tried to, draw out how it's supposed to be. The Rambam says, based on Chazal, really, when it came time to build the second Beis HaMikdash, they want to incorporate everything that Yechezkel was said, but there are things they couldn't. They didn't understand how it worked. So they did it. What they could incorporate, they did into the second temple. What they couldn't, they couldn't. Okay? So, and then they should do it. The Mefarshim say that this is actually a good lesson, like the Radak says. Someone who doesn't live in Geula will not be redeemed. If you don't believe in the Geula, you won't get it. If you don't believe in the building of Beis HaMikdash and actually get excited about it, you read about building the Beis HaMikdash, then you're not going to be excited. You won't live to see the building of the Beis HaMikdash, which is why we learn Sefer Avodah here. We learned how to build the Beis HaMikdash. We want to get people excited about learning these things, and we want them to understand what they've done to bring about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and they want to learn it again. So this is so funny. I was reading this, and what happens? Machon Mikdash calls me up and says, "Hey, do you want to give money towards the building of the base of Mikdash?" So it was a real head scratch. I'm like, okay, well, I just read it in the Navi. It must be a sign from God. I asked the lady on the phone, "Were you looking at what I was having to be studying right now?" Okay, maybe it's a sign. I think it's a sign from God. Okay, so we'll stick to there. Okay, if you repent, you'll be able to do this. So there is a passage from Sefer Ezekiel, which we're going to see now, about the water. We mentioned the water that flows out of the temple, right? You saw water coming out of the temple. You saw, remember? Okay. Yeah. So what's that a mushal for? Now we're going to see the mushal. Hold on one second. I have to get it to the right page. So what happened with the water? Oh, look at this here. I had it right on the screen here. Okay. The waters come out of the mikdash, right? So basically, it says that he said, Yosimi Tacha Biftana Bait Kadima. Water is coming out from the threshold of the temple. It was going eastward. Okay, Kadima means going eastward. By the way, when they built the second temple, they created this sort of water channel, this trickle of water going through the temple, and you could easily make such a thing. You know, they had a pipe that had water coming out a little bit right on the west side of the Azara, right? And it would trickle through what's called the Amah, right? This little channel that went through the Azara, just a trickle. But when they plugged the Amah at its exit, at where it was supposed to leave the Azara at the eastern side, it would start flooding the base of Mikdash, would start flooding the Azara, and that's how they cleaned the Azara when it got too bloody, right? It says this in the Mishnah. That's what we learned on Pesach. They did this. Now, if you have a trickle of water coming out somewhere, let's say there was water, like in the Second Temple, there's no way you can increase the volume of that water that eventually will become gushing or will become deeper, unless you had a pool. Even if you had a pool, right? You say, like, I let the water gather up, I dammed it at a certain point, like you build a dam or a pool or something, so the water actually rises, and now there's a great mass of it, and then I let it all out, it'll flow very fast, right? And it will gush, but it won't, not for a while. Once you open it, there'll be the initial, like opening up the channel of the dam, but then it'll go back to the same flow that originally started. There's no way you can increase a constant flow and increase the pressure or the volume if all you're starting is with a trickle, right? That's against the laws of fluid dynamics. Also, it's against the laws of what do you call it? Conservation of mass. You can't make a single flow become greater than it initially is, right? As a matter of fact, because of evaporation, if you start with a little bit of a stream and there's not much more other streams or other subterranean streams joining it, eventually the stream will dry up. Why? Because of evaporation and just falling into the ground and all that. The way streams work around here, let's say in other places, is that great smaller streams and other natural springs join up with each other, and that's how they're able to increase their flow. That's what feeds the Kinneret, for example, right? And then it flows out as the Jordan. Even then, because there hasn't been much rainfall now, the Jordan's actual flow out of the Kinneret is actually quite minimal, right? And we're also pumping water from there. The drainings are damming the water and preventing the water from getting there. But that's how these things normally work. But what Yechezkel saw was actually the opposite of what would naturally happen. It says, I went out, I was basically at the eastern gates looking in. Okay? And waters are trickling down this right side. Okay? The trickle that starts at the temple is coming down. By the way, this is the place where we pray nowadays, at the eastern side of what would be the base of Mikdash. Now, the Temple Mount basically ends there. That's basically the wall of the Temple Mount. It's like a drop. And even then, that's part of the extension of the Temple Mount. But in the future, he'll be able to extend the Temple Mount. It'll keep going a few thousand amos in that eastern direction. So it says, V'tzeita ish kadim v'kav biyado. The man, this angel who's showing him, had the measuring line, okay, the meter. Okay, it was in his hands, and he went out eastward. He measured 1,000 cubits to the east. Imagine the Bar-Hayim would suddenly be more to the east. Okay, yeah. Okay, ofsayim is the plural of ephes, an ophes. Okay, what is me'ofsayim? Me'ofsayim, here they translate as ankles, but I don't think it's the correct translation. Where do you see me'ofsayim? When it's raining hard on the street and you're walking the street, there's a layer of water on the street. Now, technically speaking, if you have a micrometer and stuff, you could actually measure how deep that water is. But for our intents and purposes, that water is not really measurable. Negligible depth of water, but there is a complete sheet of water on the ground. What causes cars to hydroplane, for example, right? Oh wait, you don't drive on the highway in rain, so thank God you've never hydroplaned. Okay, it's kind of scary. Doesn't happen that often, but it could happen. Okay, hydroplane meaning a sheet of water. Okay, minimal length. This is like a calculus. It has an infinitely fine thinness of water, but enough that it's there. Okay, so that's Mayoff sign. He got to this. This trickle, which started out of the base of Mikdash, becomes, a significant. It's able to cover everything. Not no negligible height, but it's covering everything. Vayomod elef vayvirina v'mayim mei birkayim, mayim birkayim. When he measured another 1,000 amos to the east. Suddenly, the water is mayim birkayim. It's up to our knees. Vayomod elef vayvirina meimot nine. And when we got another 1,000 amos out, he measured. Well, what did we get to? It was up to our waist. Okay, or as they say, the loins over here. Okay, basically up to here. Vayomad elef, another 1,000 amos. Nachla asher lo uchal lavor. Suddenly, it was a stream, but I couldn't pass through it. Quite deep. I can't just walk through it. Ki go amai meishachu or meisachu. Nachla asher lo yavor, lo yeaver. Sorry. So now it was a nachal. They translate this river. Nachal means a stream. Either way, meisachu means you have to swim through it. If you read the shin is made up to your base of shechi, okay, it's up your armpits, okay, basically shoulder height. But the point is, it was quite difficult. Suddenly, this trickle somehow gained in volume and in strength as they went farther out by 1,000 amos. So what's the mashal here? The mashal here is what we saw this week and what we see now every single year. The more people go to Har Bayis and start davening there, the more they see geula happening. That is, someone said this. When someone wants to bow down in prayer on Har Bayis, they would beat him and arrest him. They throw him down. When it's 10 people, they can't do anything about it because there's too many people already to deal with them. And when you had a whole group of 40 people at once bow down Har Bayis, it was singing and dancing. It was Yom Yerushalayim, right? Mm-hmm. And what we don't understand is that when individuals would just go to Har Bayis, so they couldn't do anything. They could barely mutter a prayer, right? They saw your lips, they would attack you. Just keep walking, Jew, right? And then when there was enough people going, so we were able to pray while walking. And more people showed up, we were able to stop and pray. And now there's prayer services, but thank God, Har Bayis is a shtibluch now. They have a few shachris minyanim, a few mincha minyanim there every single day. And every day it gets a little bit better. Why? Because more people go there. And like I said, when I met the guys at Har Bayis 3 years ago in Tisha B'Av, years ago, a decade before that, I had to sneak on. So I was alone. I went with Goyim, wearing a polo shirt and a cowboy hat and carrying a bottle of water. The students grew up. And now there was a mass of people trying to go up there on Tisha B'Av, thank God, right? It almost became dangerous last year. Were you there last year? Well, on Tisha B'Av, it was actually danger. It was. I don't think I'll be able to go. Well, whatever. I'm hoping Tisha B'Av won't happen. But the way Tisha B'Av went last time, it was actually dangerous for my son because one, it was the hottest day I recall since I lived in this country. Tisha B'Av last year must have been the hottest day in 20 years. Okay, and it was humid already in the morning. Maybe you guys remember it. And there was like a crush. I basically picked up my son on my shoulders and then I put him up on the fence because it was getting mosh pity. The way they were the crowd control that was bad. They were, I think they were trying to endanger our lives just like they did at what do you call it in Meron. That was my fear. That was how crowded it was. It was so hot already at 7 o'clock in the morning. It was already more than hot. Okay, on Tisha B'Av. So things are getting better. Okay, Vayamod elef. He's measuring where Har Bayis is not. Basically, this water is referring to the kisufim, the tishukah, the urge to go to Har Bayis from the groups that are going to Har Bayis. As those groups increase in size, you increase them 1,000-fold, you get more geula. At the beginning, it's just a trickle, but then eventually, it becomes more and more. It's up to your knees, it's up to your ankles, it's up to your waist. Okay, suddenly you won't be able to control it anymore. That's what's going on here. The redemption, the fact that the Jews. How do I know this is what we're referring to? Because the water is always a mushal for something. This isn't talking about literal water. When it talks about how this water will go and give life to the Galil and the trees will grow from it. Remember, trees and water throughout Tanakh are what? Mushals for Torah. Why is it sometimes a tree and why is it sometimes a water? Here's how it goes. When the Torah is nurturing, when the Torah is a source of what we're learning, then it's compared to water. That's usually the first step, right? When Am Yisrael left Egypt, they were looking for water at Marah. And then it says Moshe Rabbeinu taught them some halachos there. Water is the teachings of the Torah. When it talks about it's an Eitz Chayim, and it talks about the tzaddik gives fruit. Okay, that's talking about the next generation. Okay, that's talking about, or the tree that has well-watered roots. Okay, that's the one who gives over. That's the Rebbe already, who's teaching another generation. So Eitz Chaim hi lamach hazikim ba. When you stick with your Torah teachers, so the Torah is like a tree of life to you. And that's also Derech Eitz Chaim. That's by the way, the Torah is mentioned right at the beginning of Sefer Bereshis. Derech Eitz Chaim. There's Eitz Chaim B'Sof Hagan is a reference to the Torah, which is why it's eventually hidden from mankind and only eventually given to Am Yisrael. Okay, those are the teachings of the Torah. Okay, it's teachings from the original source. Okay, so that's basically what happens here. The teachings from the groups that visit Har HaBayis are going to become stronger and stronger, and they're going to lead to this redemption. Not that there's going to be literally, a spring coming forth from Har HaBayis. This is a mashal, okay? And we're seeing it happen in our days. So I'm very happy about that. Yeah, there's this basically puts to lie the big lie. More Jews in Judaism, they're thinking at Har HaBayis, there's this lie that they created. By the way, this is sometimes you create a lie for a political purpose. Okay, the most important lie was the political goal that they had was wipe out the Jewish people. That's a good political goal that many have had throughout history, right? Okay. And destroy the state of Israel, not because they're anti-Zionist or because we're Zionists, but because for them the state of Israel represents Jewish settlement, the land of Israel, and Jewish continuity. That's why they hate it so much. They want to destroy it. Correct? Okay. So they created a lie. What was the lie? The antithesis of the state of Israel. The so-called Palestinian people exist as what? Destroy Israel. It's not about a national movement with the culture and history, ideas, and their own language, their own land. It's just a ploy, a trick to replace the Jewish people, destroy the people of Israel, which is why, wait a minute, why are there so many so-called Palestinians throughout the world now protesting under the Palestinian flag? It's just randos from around the world who hate Jews, united under one flag. It's like the Nazi flag. Hitler created a flag to unite the people who want to kill the Jews. By the way, Nazism started. Their most distinguishing feature, people didn't know that it's for nationalism and socialism and all these other things. The most glaring facet of his public policy and his declarations in the 1930s was anti-Semitism. It's all the Jews' fault. That's what we're seeing nowadays. So the big lie created to destroy Am Yisrael back in, let's say, 60 years ago was that there's this other nation that needs to replace us, right? Now there's another big lie. Another big lie is somehow more Jews and Judaism at Har HaBayis will result in World War III. There's no reason to say that, by the way. What happened was, someone pointed out, we saw it last week, really, Moshe Dayan and people like him in the establishment didn't want Jews diving on Har HaBayis when it became available to Jews, or doing anything Har HaBayis. Rav Gordon wanted to even build a Beis Mikdash, and he even started a whole minyan there. Why did he stop him? Because to him, this was basically a Jewish Vatican. He wanted Judaism to be, and Israel to be, secular. And this is basically seeing a renaissance of Judaism, temple Judaism. That's the worst kind. So he made an unholy alliance with Haradite Judaism, which is also opposed to Jews going to Har HaBayis. But at the time, it was just because we don't know what we're doing, and it's halachas and all that, so they could shake hands. If you asked rabbis then, oh, I don't want Jews going to Har HaBayis because they're going to Tuma, they're walking to the Dome of the Rock. That was a bad thing, and I would agree with that. You have to teach them. But Moshe Dayan doesn't want Jews on Har HaBayis because he wants an end to Judaism. So the fact is that they have an alliance there, no Jews on Har HaBayis. Of course, it backfired against the religious, but they created this myth that people think that this is, to them, this is a law of nature. If Chas v'Shalom, the Jews were to do anything on Har HaBayis, that will lead to the Goyim wanting to destroy us. As though they don't want to destroy us already. As though, like we did say, you could tell people, man, we must have really provoked the Goyim bad in order to deserve that Holocaust, right? Yeah. That was a Kahana thing. Said we must have really upset the Arabs really good to deserve all those pogroms in the late 1920s in Palestine. Must have been. Remember they told what? Yeah, we're a bunch of troublemakers. Remember what it says about Har HaBayis in the embassy in Jerusalem. If Trump would actually put the embassy there, everybody believed this. You put the American embassy in Jerusalem, that will result in World War III, right? And did that happen? Of course not. It was just a lie. And according to Yechezkel, of course, it's the exact opposite. The Geula starts at Har HaBayis. The May of Zion, the trickle of water that comes out of Har HaBayis, That's where the Geula happens. And that's what he was being shown. Okay, so you have to teach people about the Beis Hamikdash. And no, actually, over there. And the rabbi came, the first one and the last one. I also don't have Sefer Shoftim on my desk. Okay, so there you go. But I'm happy to report that was told this by the Hayehudi guy. I don't know how that is and why he spells his name without an A. It's H Yehudi, and it's a blog, and he brings materials from, I think, quite a good collection of other writers, especially Rabbi Brand's writings and videos. And he also puts stuff I do. So go look that up. But he's anonymous, and I do not know who he is. I've guessed a few times, but it doesn't really matter who he is. I sometimes disagree, very rarely, with things he's writing. Sometimes he's a little bit harsh. But you can look this up. He pointed out that Mora Mikdash is dead. What is Irgun Mora Mikdash? Do you guys remember what Mora Mikdash is? They were putting out pamphlets. Where are those pamphlets? They're telling people, don't go to Har Bayis, glossy pamphlets and flyers. Rav Kook said not to. Both Rav Kook's son said not to. Chief rabbis say not to. All these rabbis, Rabbi Tau says not to, right? That's the Mora Mikdash organization. So you used to see them. You could shut off the air conditioner now. You used to see the Mora Mikdash people standing at the entrance to Har Bayis with their glossies, telling people not to go to Har Bayis. And as I pointed out a few years ago, I called this Posking by Pashkeville. What is it? Their materials are actually short on primary sources, just like the rabbis say you shouldn't go. The rabbis say you shouldn't go. It's not time yet. But it's a lot of differing nevias. The people tell you go to Har Bayis will tell you, look, there's a Sifrei, there's mitzvahs in the Torah, there's Pesukim, there's the Rambam, there's all these halachas. Yeah, but the rabbis say not to. So that was Mora Mikdash, who was very weak. And they're basically out of business now. You know why? Rumors are going around that too many of their activists who were there handing out the flyers to people, don't go to Har Bayis, engaged in vikuach with the people going to Har Bayis, and were convinced, oh yeah, maybe I should be going to Har Bayis. And they realized that through their actions, they were getting more people interested in this. Like Rabbi Weber himself. What brought him to Har Bayis? The fact that the Haredi press was so much against it and saying all sorts of nonsense against the Jews who were going to Har Bayis. Remember what he say? He read in Hamodia that Hamodia was criticizing Jews for walking around in Har Bayis without shoes, just like those Muslims do. They're acting like Muslims. And Rabbi Weber wrote to them and says, I don't go to Har Bayis, but the fact that you're not supposed to go to Har Bayis with your shoes is actually a Mishnah Meforeshes. It's an explicit Mishnah. The Muslims got it from us. The whole prayer rugs and being barefoot and washing the hands and feet is something the Muslims got from Maimonides. Okay? So why can you do this? So it got him interested in like, oh, Takai, maybe you should do this. There are many anti-Zionists who became Zionists because they looked into these ideas. By the way, I'm talking about good kosher Torah Zionism, not even religious Zionism. I'm talking about just Vilna Gaon type. Okay? Vilna Gaon Zionism. So it gets people interested. What? A few. Well, Rabbi Tal was originally, he didn't survive the Holocaust. Before Rabbi Tal died, he was the Ema Banim Smecha. He was part of the Satmar Hungarian rabbis against Zionism, and he realized his great mistake, and he wrote a Mea Culpa book. That's Ema Banim Smecha. You know what I'm talking about? Is that who you're talking about? But he did survive. He died. No, he paid with his life, and he regretted it. There was also Rabbi Soloveitchik himself. Rabbi Soloveitchik came from, was a total brisker through and through. He noted that political anti-Zionism was the tradition of his family, but he wrote many books about this. His biggest speeches. He became the head of the Mizrahi in America, and his biggest shir of the year was when? What day did he choose to mark his shir? The 5th of Iyar. That was when he gave a big Zionist speech. Why? Because he said, we made a big mistake. Anti-Zionism was a big mistake. We should have had at least some sort of political and religious Zionism. Is the Jewish people stand for founding a state of Israel or a state in the land of Israel and doing these things. Yishuv Haaretz. We forgot about that. It got us killed. So he acknowledged his mistake, and he spent the rest of his life fighting for what he should have in the 1930s and 40s. Okay, that was Rabbi Soloveitchik. So basically, I pointed out to Hayehudi guy that Mora Mikdash killed themselves by suicide, death by suicide through the Streisand effect. What's the Streisand effect? Streisand effect is named for the 1970s American Jewish singer Barbra Streisand. Okay, I don't know what she's done. It's like from my mother's time, so she was popular then. What did Barbra Streisand do? Why is it named for her? Because there was a guy who was posting pictures of beachfront properties in California on his website. He took from like a helicopter or something like that, or a satellite or something. This website got no attention, and it just, you see, here's Pacific Coast, here's a nice looking house, bird's eye view. Okay, hundreds of them. Somehow Barbara Streisand found out that her house was in this collection. She's very rich. And she started a legal battle to get all pictures of her house excised from the internet, put out by this guy. Now, before that, no one knew that they were looking at Barbara Streisand's house. No one's even looking at anybody else in this house. Suddenly, there's a lawsuit and there's attention that Barbara Streisand is trying to get pictures of her house taken off the internet. And suddenly people are looking like, what are we talking about? What is her house is on the internet? Where's her house? Where's it? Suddenly people know where she lives and what her house looks like. By her trying to destroy this thing, she brought attention to it. Actually, made it much worse for herself. She could have just not seen it. No one saw it anyways. There was no connection. It could have been a house on any beach. It could have even been an East Coast house, but the picture flipped upside down so that the beach is not. No one knew anything, any connection to anything. So she drew it there. So too, Mora Mikdash, God should help them and cure them from their stupidity, and they should all repent and visit Har-Bayis soon because it's a mitzvah. They basically took a lot of Jews away from doing mitzvahs for many years. Okay, because the Rambam says, what's the din of Mora Mikdash now? How do you complete the mitzvah of Mora Mikdash today? When the base of Mikdash is in ruins, how do you fulfill the mitzvah of Mora Mikdash today? By the way, the Rambam didn't make this up. The Rambam got this from himself. What is the mitzvah of Mora Mikdash today? Mora Mikdash, Mem Vav Reish Aleph. How do you do Mora Mikdash today? You make sure to go to the places you're allowed to go and stay out of the places you're not allowed to go. The Rambam's definition. And when you go there, make sure not to carry your money sack and don't carry your makil and don't wear your shoes. Basically, go to where you're allowed to go with respect and to pray and stay out of the Azara. That's the mitzvah of Mora Mikdash. That's the definition of Mora Mikdash for you and me. And they turned it on its head. Magia lahem. So they Streisand affected themselves. They brought too much attention to this. They got many more people to go to the base of Mikdash until they couldn't. It was a waste of money. They're not fighting anymore. Thank God. They should lose so many fights. Jews should have so many. If there were Jews who are trying to tell people, just avoid eating meat. Avoid eating meat. Those Jews who are they're the next ones. They're going to tell people avoid eating meat, eat Frankenstein, stuff, the science experiments. Frozen science experiments that are made to look like sausages. Eat that instead of meat. Many Jews are going to look into the halachas and be like, wait a minute, I do have a mitzvah to eat meat. I have a mitzvah to eat korbanos. I'm a kohen. I'm supposed to eat the chatas and the yasham. I'm a Yisrael. I'm supposed to eat the sar kudshim on Yontif, and I'm supposed to eat korban pesach, and that's supposed to be meat. And not only that, I fulfill a mitzvah every Yontif simcha by eating meat. I'm not telling you should be eating meat all the time. Rambam says dio once a week. You don't even have to eat red meat. You can eat chicken. Okay, there are many great chachamim subsisted on just a little bit of chicken once a week. That's fine. Okay, but there are people who are going to realize, hopefully, these fake Jewish vegetarians and vegans are also going to Streisand affect themselves into oblivion. And when people realize the halacha is very clear, sometimes you have a mitzvah to eat meat, sometimes you have an obligation to eat meat. Okay, they're not, despite why they even come up with this thing, no eating meat. Like the rabbi said, it's a crazy idea. It's just a part of religion that's an idolatrous religion, a pagan religion that started in the West. That somehow we have to save Earth from ourselves. So you shouldn't eat, even though it's healthy for you, basically. And don't deprive your children of eating meat. Maybe if you're in your 50s already, you're mostly vegetarian, that's fine. You don't need it, but your kids need it. You want your kids to be strong, feed them. Okay, what?
Rabbi.
Hold on. Yeah, in yeshiva.
I was talking with my friend, and I was explaining to him different types of characters. Because he didn't know the actual definition.
Well, the Rambam, using the Rambam is a little bit unclear. Despite
I read him what's written in the room.
Okay. Sefer Ramada. Yeah, Kilchos Tshuva. The Rambam says, Amin is this, not Bikoris is this, a Kofar is that.
Yeah.
Portion of Tzibur. Yeah.
Machti'ei harabim. Afilu levatel mitzvat aseh.
Yeah, Machti'ei harabim. Normally it means a person to do thou shalt not. But even if you deprive people of their thou shalts, they didn't do any sin. They just did not do positive mitzvahs. They have to shut up the air conditioner there. Yeah, good. That's Machti'ei Rabin, correct.
So that kind of sounds like that makes the Rabbanut.
Well, yeah, so the Rabbanut lost its legitimacy a long time ago. Yeah, so there you go. What's your question? Guy online?
Well, it's a comment. I know in Or Sameach there was a sort of underground with respect to the Har HaBayit issue, and at least some people were first made curious about it because of the Streisand effect
Yes,
in the yeshiva as well.
yes. I told the Rosh Kola today, they have this minhag during the 3 weeks that they say Tikkun Chatzos during the middle of the day. Everybody, sometimes during the middle of the day, not lav dafka that the minhag of Chatzos picks up the Tikkun Chatzos and sits down somewhere on the floor and says it. Okay? I said, I feel like I've gone back to yeshiva. When I was in yeshiva, not everybody was planning practically to move to the land of Israel, even though they're supposed to. Especially not even the faculty. The faculty are like, yeah, maybe they're still in Chutz La'aretz, so apparently that's not their agenda. Now, many students of my yeshiva have made aliyah, mostly to Beit Shemesh. And even the Menahel, the founding Menahel of the yeshiva, himself made aliyah recently. He's already, quite well, and he's quite older. I think he's a great grandfather. It took him a while, but he's the exception, not the rule. In yeshiva, it was the exception was those who are ready to make the aliyah, right? So that was weird. And now I made it. And now I'm here in Israel, and I'm thinking, I'm looking around. I'm in the same situation. Those who are wanting to make the next aliyah, which is to Har HaBayis, are in the minority. The majority are not. It's not on their agenda. I pointed out to the Rosh Kol himself has not been there. Said, how many people in this base medrash have been to Har HaBayis? Two. Okay, there are two people here. Okay? One's a veteran, one's me. But everybody else is, it's still not there. We're still talking them into it. So I've come back 20 years later. I'm in the same situation I was. Okay, for those in the Chutz La'aretz, the challenge is getting to Eretz Yisrael, and for those here, the challenge is getting to Har HaBayis.